There are many dark forces out there in the world of Norn, many that people do not truly understand. Over the centuries, rumors of these mythical dark forces would spread throughout the different lands, but still people were yet to see them in action, with them ultimately just believing them to be stories or old folk tales that did not exist any longer. However, for some, they would still hope that one day these forces would come out from out of the shadows and do their bidding, or that they could become their servants and join their ranks. With the rise of man and elf throughout the land, wars would rage on with other creatures getting involved as well, and thus the rise of political parties and nations would come about, leading to even further wars and poor relations spreading all over. It would be during this time where one deadly faction that was seen as a dark force would come into play. This faction would go on to do some of the darkest tasks one could think of, taking life away from people in the dark of night when they least expected it, making many people fearful of what could happen to them. This group would be known as the Dark Brotherhood, who would be renowned for performing assassinations all over Tamriel to appease their deity known as Sithis. But who are they really? Why and how did they come into being? What have they been up to over the years, and where are they now? Well, in today's video we will be looking into the lore behind the guild that hides within the shadows and is clouded by mystery. This is the story of the Dark Brotherhood from the Elder Scrolls. The Dark Brotherhood's history is filled with mystery, as you can expect, due to the fact that everything they do is illegal, and thus documenting their actions would be seen as not very wise. However, a lot of their origins is believed to be linked back to the other assassin group made up by the Dark Elves, named the Morag Tong, who located themselves mainly in Morrowind and celebrated each murder in the name of Mythala. It is believed that in 2920 of the First Era, this group would go on to assassinate the Emperor of the time, Reman III, most likely being hired by an ambitious Versajude Shay, who would go on to take the throne for himself. By the year 324 of the Second Era, they would then go on to assassinate Versajude Shay as well, which would go on to trigger a frenzy amongst the nobles all across of Tamriel. And in response to this barbaric attack on the Emperor, the Morag Tong would be found responsible and were immediately outlawed all over the continent and would form into new groups. Another extremely popular theory states that the Brotherhood split away from the Morag Tong due to religious reasons. This theory states that during the time of the Morag Tong backlash that was happening all over Tamriel, they would go out and appeal to the Tribunal, the highest power at the time within Morrowind, to ensure they stayed around and continued on existing. The Tribune had one problem with them, however, and that was their worship of the patron goddess Mythala. The Tribunal made a compromise with them, stating the Tong could continue to exist, however in exchange they would have to drop their worship of Mythala and move to worshiping Vivec instead. This is their main rumoured trigger event for the split between the Morag Tong and the group that would go on to be named as the Dark Brotherhood, as they wanted to continue worshipping their goddess and did not want to change to worshipping Vivec, as that would destroy who they were in the first place. The rest of the Morag Tong agreed to worship the Tribune's deity of Vivec, and the split was done, with the Morag Tong also agreeing to limit their activities to the First Era level of traditional inter-house rivalry. One other theory was that after the assassination event that took place and the Morag Tong being heavily criticized for it, a former member of the guild was spoken to by Sithis, the deity known as the Dreadfather, that is the representative of emptiness and the void, and was demanded by Sithis to form a new guild of assassins, one that would go on to worship him as their main deity, not Mythala, and have their ultimate aim to marry business with death, to satisfy the void's hunger for souls. For one author named Enric Milnes, he would go on to supposedly have an interview with the Night Mother from the guild, who would go on to state that the Dark Brotherhood was not actually a split-off guild from the Morag Tong. Instead, it was an offshoot of the Thieves Guild, which was a huge revelation when it came out. However, as soon as this was published out to audiences, Milnes would go on to be assassinated, making it seem more likely that this was true. Either that, or the Dark Brotherhood was insulted by his claim, and that he did not in fact speak to the Night Mother and was just blaspheming her name. Despite that, in his work he would go on to state that during the Second Era, a few of the Thieves Guild members would find it enjoyable to not only break into people's houses to steal their stuff, but they would also go on to strangle the occupants who would be present during the burglary. The woman who would later go on to become the Night Mother would go on to believe that it should be a right and be fully recognized for the members of the Thieves Guild to kill people when out on their quests. However, the leader of the Thieves Guild at the time believed this was a horrific idea as it would be terrible for their business direction and immediately ruled it out. Realizing this was her true goal, the Night Mother would go on to found the Murder Syndicate, which would go on to become the Dark Brotherhood, and the rumored connection to the Morag Tong only raised its head after the assassination when multiple Tong assassins quit their organization that was quickly failing, as well as being shunned, and joined this brand new organization then known as the Syndicate. Because of this theory, it is still unknown who truly was behind the assassination, but many sources really do believe that the Brotherhood took a part in it at least, even if it was just a little bit. Despite all of these theories, however, one notable bit of evidence was found out there within the lands of Tamriel that gives the earliest date of when the Dark Brotherhood could have been about. This bit of evidence was a note found beneath the floorboards of an abandoned house within the Nordic village of Jallenheim, which on it had a message addressed to someone only named as Brother, and within the message it spoke of a war that was going on between two shadowy organizations. This note was dated the year of 358 of the Second Era, making it clear that at this point in Tamriel's history, the Dark Brotherhood were around and were at war with the Morag Tong, the other group of assassins that were documented out there. Whilst this was the first piece of recorded history about the Dark Brotherhood, 50 years later after that note, the Blood Queen Alimahera of Hagath would also write a short piece within her journals about how her family had enlisted the services of the Dark Brotherhood during her grandfather's time, meaning that the Dark Brotherhood must have been formed and put into place around the years of 358 or 360 during the Second Era. However, the exact date is unknown. Were they just a split of the Morag Tong due to religious reasons? Were they a split off of the Thieves Guild? Or were they just the creation of a sole individual who was reached out by Sithis to do the Void's bidding? Maybe we will never know the exact reason it was set up, but it is clear once they were made into a true guild, their impact on the world would be absolutely terrifying. And for the people of Tamriel, they would go on to know the name of the Dark Brotherhood, especially as they go forward in the Second Era and into the Third and the Fourth Era. After the assassination event caused by either the Morag Tong or the Dark Brotherhood, the Second Empire had come to an end. It was finally the dawn of a new era and the period known as the Interregnum. During this period, pretty much all of Tamriel was hit by rapidly declining living standards, and due to how bad things were all over, many regarded this new era as one where people had an attitude of anti-intellectualism. It was because of this new era that the Dark Brotherhood rose even further as their power became known all throughout the land. Thriving within the Gold Coast within the Interregnum, the Dark Brotherhood would go on to kill many notable nobles, including the self-declared provincial governor of Anvil in Cyrodiil, Fortunata ap Dougal, and Primate Artorius of the Order of the Hour, a group consisting of the militant arm of the Akatosh Chantry. Things really started to heat up within the 41st year of the Third Era, when the Dark Brotherhood really showed what they were made of, and would go on to murder Tiber Septim's heir, Pelagus I, whilst they were praying within the Temple of the One, really showing that no one was off limits and anyone could be a victim to their attacks. However, within the year 325 of the Third Era, the Brotherhood was suddenly decimated because of a brutal internal power struggle. A lot of the people who knew about this internal battle all claimed it must have involved the weapon known as Merun's Razor, an artifact that was long sought after by the Brotherhood because it was able to kill any target they wished with a single strike. With this internal attack having now wiped out a lot of the members, the Brotherhood now took the Iliac Bay region and would become once again a dominant force there, as they were going to set up their own guild hall in almost every single town and city in the area by the year of 405 in the Third Era, with their main headquarters being named as the Nightside Asylum. All was going well for the Brotherhood. However, just before the phenomenon known as the Warp in the West in the year 417, one of the official cities out within the Iliac Bay went on to be very close to discovering the Nightside Asylum's secret location. With an official from the city out on his way, an assassin was sent out to take them out. But it wasn't official that this assassin was part of the Dark Brotherhood, despite many believing it to be so. In fact, it was said that the assassin was actually just a simple adventurer who had not taken an arrow to the knee, who summoned Mephala and was given this task by the Daedric Prince in return for the Daedric artifact known as the Ebony Blade. After this, once again, another struggle happened within the Dark Brotherhood as one member named Grenwyr Blenwyth planned their own new crusade against the other members and the overall management. Blenwyth believed they had personally been ordered by Sithis to remove by force all non-vampires from the Brotherhood, and with that plan would go on to set up their new organization that would become known as the Crimson Scars. Despite creating this rogue faction that was designed to hit back against the Dark Brotherhood, one other member would go on to quickly betray him and turn him into the 5 members of the Black Hand, the ruling body of the Dark Brotherhood. And now with all of that information, the Dark Brotherhood took actions and would go on to murder all of the members of the Crimson Scars. But despite all of this being reported, it is unknown where this secret sanctuary is located or where the remains of Grenwyr are to this day. There were other areas in which the Brotherhood were known for being located in. Morrowind, for example, was still being considered as a real stronghold for the guild. However, their presence on the small island near Morrowind, known as Vardenfell, was virtually unknown. This all changed within the year of 427 in the Third Era, when the Brotherhood tried to gain a foothold on the island as they were going to ally themselves with a small group known as the Dagonites, a small group of loyal cultists who worship Mehrim's Dagon, and with their assistance would go on to provide them with shelter. But word quickly went around about the Brotherhood's presence and how they were being protected by the cultists of the Dagonites, as the Morad Tong went on to wipe out the threat. Here the Tong repelled all of the guild and cult members, as well as taking out some of their most vital members, such as Severa Magia, the Night Mother at the time, who was taking up secret residence on the island. With the guild and cult members being killed by the Tong, they would then go on to recover 27 pieces of enchanted clothing and jewelry linked closely to Mephala, known as the Threads of the Web Spinner, which the Dark Brotherhood had stolen from them in the first place. During that same time, over on the mainland of Morrowind, the king named Halalu Helseth hired the formidable Brotherhood to assassinate a man known as the Nerevarine, who he believed to be the one true threat, someone who might challenge his rule as king. But the Nerevarine was smart, and hearing about the planned assassination, would go on to track down the assassins and find their sanctuary within the manor district of Old Mournhold, and would go on to kill their local leader, the high-ranking Dandras Vuls, who would be in possession of a letter signed between the Night Mother and H, who was easily identified as being King Helseth. Coming face to face with the king, Helseth explained that the assassination attempt was simply due to misinformation and there was to be no bad blood. For the Brotherhood, however, they had lost one of their key hideouts and one of their highest-ranking members of Vuls. However, that did not see the end of the Dark Brotherhood. Instead, they had a new goal, and that was to take out the first queen of Morrowind, known as Barenzea. But before they could, the Nerevarine got involved once again and would go on to kill all of the assassins sent on this mission. It was believed that this attack was just a plan to draw out the Nerevarine once again and to take him out, as he was the true target. But regardless, if this was the plan, it still did not work again, as the Nerevarine was too powerful and was victorious over their plans. Out within Cyrodiil, however, things weren't much easier for the Brotherhood, as a huge betrayal would be in the making. Matteo Bellamont, who was a trusted speaker for the Brotherhood, had planned on secretly taking out and destroying everything about the Brotherhood, as he was seeking revenge for the assassination of his mother in the years that passed. As his plans went ahead, a new member rose to the ranks of the Brotherhood after being witness doing horrific acts on innocents out within the lands. Eventually, this member would please the Brotherhood and eventually would become so powerful that they would help Bellamont silence the Black Hand and would purify the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, as Bellamont the traitor would convince them to take out their fellow members and the leaders of the Black Hand. With just the remaining speakers left, including Bellamont and the newcomer, they would go down to the Night Mother's crypt beneath the lucky old lady statue in Breville to seek her guidance. But as they got there, Bellamont revealed himself as well as his revenge mission, and would go on to kill 2 of the 4 speakers before being taken out once once and for all by the newcomer, who had finally realized they had been lied to by this Brotherhood traitor. Defending the Night Mother and the Brotherhood, the newcomer would be rewarded by the Night Mother and would become her listener, one of the most honored roles within the Dark Brotherhood. With this, the Brotherhood would go on to slowly recover. However, with the loss of half of the Black Hand, as well as the purification of the Cheydinhal Sanctuary, the Cyrodiil branch of the Dark Brotherhood would remain heavily crippled at the end of the Third Era. It was a time of ups and downs for the Brotherhood. They had lost a lot of ground within both Morrowind and Cyrodiil, and their presence on Vardenfell had been removed by the Morag Tong in an act of revenge. Their members, however, would be fiercely loyal and still hoping that their guild would thrive out within the world. But now was the turn of the Fourth Era, and unfortunately for this ancient mythical guild, their time was coming to an end, and the fall of the Dark Brotherhood was right around the corner. Despite many members wanting the Brotherhood to thrive going into the Fourth Era, so many internal and external events only sped up the downfall of the Brotherhood and left them crippled massively. The Great War going on within the Imperial City did not help this either, as it would completely strain the guild as well as the everyday people all over Tamriel, with huge riots happening out within Breville, Bruma and Cheydinhal, leaving the Brotherhood without any main strongholds in which they could start their rebuilding process. With the war raging on more and more, many of their strongholds would go on to be completely evacuated or outright destroyed, leaving many of the members stranded with nowhere to go. Not only that, but generals of the war effort also would go on to target members of this organization as a somewhat side mission for them, with many of their members out within Hammerfell being outright eliminated, with not many people knowing if there were any remaining survivors left. Because of this, it was almost impossible for the Brotherhood to receive or even take up contracts within all of the regions, which would go on to completely weaken their guild's resources, reputation, as well as power and influence. Out within Black Marsh, their Shadow Scale training facility would also become completely abandoned, leaving them without any new recruits and new assassins, which would lead to the Shadow Scale tradition to start to die out. With all of this happening, the Black Hand leadership tried desperately to come up with a new plan for where the Brotherhood went next, with some wanting to expand more, while others wanted to pack it up for good. In the year of 186 of the Fourth Era, things got worse as their sanctuary within Bruma would be completely destroyed, leaving almost no survivors, completely demoralizing the Dark Brotherhood members and causing more to want to call it a day once and for all. By the year 187, there were only 4 known active sanctuaries left within all of Tamriel, showing how much power they had lost during this period. These consisted of the Brotherhood's headquarters within Cheydinhal Cyrodiil, the Wayrest Sanctuary in High Rock, the Corinthe Sanctuary in Elsewhere, and the Falkreath Sanctuary in the Pine Forest of Skyrim. That following year, a spy known as the Forgotten Hero would go on to infiltrate the organization, being hired by the father of the listener, known as Alysanne Dupree. Their goal was to infiltrate this organization and kill Alysanne, who he claimed had killed his wife. The true fact was that he in fact killed his own wife, causing Alysanne to flee to the Brotherhood and would go on to seek revenge on her father, becoming a loyal assassin in the process to one day take him out. However, in retaliation, her father had the same plan, as he would go on to hire this Forgotten Hero. Despite this goal they had been sent on, the Forgotten Hero was given a task by the Brotherhood to assassinate King Baranier of Wayrest to prove themselves. But at this same time, King Baranier, along with corsairs who he was secretly working with, went on to attack Wayrest, which supposedly contained his enemies, and with those attacks, the Brotherhood sanctuary there would be raided and destroyed as a result. With that done, it was unknown if the Forgotten Hero actually went through with the killing of the king, or if they would spare his life. And the last known whereabouts of this hero was within the Clockwork City in the year 201, as they would go on to kill the Dunmer, known as Mechinar, who wanted to achieve godhood. After that, the hero's whereabouts and actions are completely unknown. With lots of losses happening all over for the Brotherhood, the surviving Black Hand leadership would go on to further close down the Corinthe Warenthe Sanctuary and move its members to reinforce the crucial Cyrodiil faction. According to the Journal of the Imperial Assassin and soon-to-be Keeper of the Brotherhood, Cicero, the political and social chaos that was engulfing Cyrodiil and the Empire allowed for massive gang wars to happen within Breville, which would once again lead to more deaths of members of the Brotherhood, including their listener at the time, as well as the full destruction of the Night Mother's crypt. The crypt wasn't a result of these gang wars according to Cicero. Instead, this was destroyed by Alisand's father, who had learned all of the information he needed about the Brotherhood from the Forgotten Hero, and sent in his armies to kill the Night Mother, his daughter, and ultimately end the Dark Brotherhood once and for all. In this process, Alisand Dupree would be killed by her own father whilst defending the Night Mother's corpse, being incinerated by her father's fire spell. But before the Brotherhood and Night Mother completely fell, one individual assassin known as Garnag was able to retrieve the Night Mother's corpse before it could be destroyed and ruined Alisand's father's ultimate plans. With the Night Mother's corpse now safe away from harm, there needed to be a new listener, as theirs had been killed within the attacks. Not only that, but the corpse needed to be safeguarded as it was quickly decomposing, and with this, the remaining Black Hand reinstituted the ancient position of Keeper, whose task was to keep the Night Mother's corpse intact so that her spirit could remain in Tamriel to speak to the listener, whoever that might be. Despite this act being put into place, the Night Mother did not say a word, which would only go on to further demoralize the surviving membership within Cheydinhal. The leader of the sanctuary at the time and last remaining member of the Black Hand, Rasha, would go on to self-proclaim themselves as the new listener to try and hear the Black Sacraments from the Night Mother. However, he also failed to hear the words from the Night Mother, and as he failed to recite all of the words the Night Mother taught to all the listeners, confirmed by the Keepers, he was then killed for trying to deceive the rest of the members. With this, only 3 members from this branch remained, those being the Keeper Cicero, Garnag, and Pontius. But once again, this didn't last long, as Pontius would go on to be slain by just some common bandits on the streets, and then quickly after that, Garnag would completely disappear without a trace, either being killed by someone or something, or fleeing from the Brotherhood and becoming a deserter. With Cicero being the only remaining member from the Cyrodiil branch, he would go on to become mad, being completely isolated, demoralized, and desperate. In the year 200 of the 4th era, only one sanctuary was reported of being still active, and that was the sanctuary within Falkreath, within Skyrim. With this news, Cicero, now completely mad and desperate, took the Night Mother to it, despite knowing that they did not follow the old ways of respecting the Night Mother, as their leader Astrid simply ran it as an organization of murderers for hire. During this point in time, however, one child who had run away from the Honor All orphanage was rumored to be calling out for the Night Mother and the Dark Brotherhood to get revenge of the owner of the orphanage, named Greylod the Kind. In response to all of these rumors, the legendary new Dragonborn would go on to meet the boy known as Aventus and fulfill his contract, killing Greylod to the cheer of all the other orphans. After this event, the Dragonborn would go on to retrieve a mysterious note with the imprint of a black hand and the famous words of "We know" below it. As the Dragonborn went to sleep, they would then be awoken in an abandoned shack with the Dark Brotherhood assassin of Astrid watching over them. Revealing that she was pleased with the work they had done, she would go on to task the Dragonborn with deciding the fate of 3 other people she had captured. After completing this daunting task, the Dragonborn would be invited into the Dark Brotherhood sanctuary and become a full member of the organization. The Dragonborn would quickly rise through the ranks, discovering that they themselves were the new listener who could finally hear what the Night Mother had planned for them. After this discovery, the Dragonborn would go on to kill what they thought was Emperor Titus Mede II. However, it was in fact a body double, as the Dragonborn would find out whilst being captured by Commander Maro. It was also revealed during this that there was a secret informant within the Brotherhood who had told them of their overall plans. As the Dragonborn escaped, they would go on to see that the sanctuary was under attack and was in the process of being completely destroyed. Escaping the attack once again, the Dragonborn would hide within the Night Mother's coffin and would eventually be saved by fellow guild members Babette and Nazir. Nazir. After this, it was discovered that Astrid, the leader of the branch, was in fact the one who was the traitor, as she felt threatened by the Night Mother's choice and also wanted political immunity in exchange for the Dragonborn. Realizing that Maro had gone back on his word, Astrid would plead to the Dragonborn that they should kill her, stating they had to as part of the Black Sacrament. But for the sanctuary within Falkreath, it was now in total ruin, and the remaining members there needed a new hideout that could not be threatened, and one where they could rebuild once again. Here they would move to the new sanctuary out within Dawnstar, with the remaining members of Babette, Nazir, and Cicero, if he was spared by the Dragonborn, to be housed there, with the Dragonborn becoming the new leader of the Brotherhood and the legendary listener of the Night Mother. After finally completing the contract of killing Emperor Titus Mede II, the Brotherhood were able to gain enough funds to finally start their rebuilding process, and also make a name for themselves once again, showing that anyone was on the table to be assassinated. This new setup allowed for more contracts to start flooding in, with even several new Dark Brotherhood initiates turning up to be a part of the guild. With that, the Dark Brotherhood lives on, even if it is much smaller in scale than before. However, now having some guidance from the Night Mother and better leadership with the Dragonborn, it is most likely on the up once again. And maybe later in the 4th era and going into the 5th era, the Dark Brotherhood will make a new resurgence and become that dominant force that they once were all over Tamriel. Will they ever go back to being universally feared, or will they just be seen as an annoying nuisance for political parties? Only time can really tell. But for now, this has been the origin story of the dark force and terrifying guild that goes by Sithis' doing. This has been the story of the faction known as the Dark Brotherhood. I want to say a big thank you for watching this video, and a huge thank you to my patrons for allowing me to make them on a regular basis, including my small fishes, my big fishes Christopher, Last Persona user, Arto Creme, Greg, and our new guy Anthony, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Fiery Italian, Ico the Wolf, and Sith Lord 906, my sharks Whale Such Gaming, Jason X117, Breadbeard, and Rondacy, and my Megalodons, Sinus, Hazy Thoughts, and Chernobyl Stalker. But that is all for now. Thank you for watching again, and if you want more lore videos, check out my playlist below. Use my G Fuel link and code WiseFishYT for up to 30% off of your orders. And please do like, comment, and subscribe to help get these videos out there. And with all of that said, I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.
Are we alone? Yes. Yes! Alone! Sweet solitude! No one will hear us, disturb us. Everything is going according to plan.